particular, I'd say really know what you want to do and why, because it really helps with kind of your narrative and
Yeah.
being able to tell good stories.
Thank you, Jimmy, for your time today. Really, really appreciate it. Would you please tell me a little bit about yourself?
For sure, yeah. Thanks for having me here. I'm originally from India and I did electrical engineering there. After engineering, I worked in engineering operations and supply chain sort of roles in India for about 3 years and kind of decided that's not what I want to do forever. And so I came to the US, went to UNC for business school. Super amazing experience. Learned a lot of new things which I hadn't done before. Go Tar Heels.
Yes, go Tar
And
Heels for
then,
sure.
and then I think at the end of business school, I really didn't know what I wanted to do.
Mm.
Um, and so I decided I'll go into consulting, which kind of lets you explore a lot more
Yep.
things. And so I
Yep.
went to Deloitte in strategy and operations. I interned there and then went back full time. I was at Deloitte for 3.5 years, worked in mergers and acquisitions, strategy, finance, a bunch of roles, different industries. My third year in Deloitte, I was like, okay, I don't want to travel so much anymore. And tech was an industry I was interested in. And so I started interviewing tech, ended up at Google. I worked in cloud for a
Mhm.
little while. And then most recently, I've been working in strategy and operations in NBU, next billion users.
Gotcha. Just wanted to learn more about your journey from consulting to Google. Like, what was that process? What did that process look like? Did you, I mean, obviously at some point you would have applied, but like, were you kind of approached by someone? Did you apply? If you applied, did you have a referral? And like, what was the interview process look like?
Yeah, for sure. I wasn't looking for a role really. I was thinking about leaving consulting. Uh, I was a manager in strategy and ops in Boston. And a recruiter from Google reached out. They had a happy hour, and
Uh,
I almost wasn't going to go. And at the last minute, I was like, you know what? It's Friday. Let's just go meet people. And
Free
I
drinks.
met a few people. Exactly. And I met a few people. I had some good conversations. I applied to a role. And then I actually spoke with a few different teams within Google, um, and then interviewed for a role and got accepted. I think at the same time I was interviewing with Amazon. So I had a senior
Oh, okay.
PM offer at Amazon and then Google. And I decided to come to Google.
Yeah.
The interview process was, I'd say, very similar to like all tech interview process. It was like phone
Uh-huh.
screening initial with an HR, and then a phone screening with a person who was on my ladder, job
Yeah.
ladder, which is product ops. Um, and then like a 4 round interview process, a bunch of behavioral
Gotcha.
case study,
Gotcha.
brainstorming type questions.
Gotcha.
And at the end of it, they kind of had a decision.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So you mentioned something about the next billion users, and then you mentioned something about like what you do and like what you've done before. Just want to, I think it's the right time to ask you what you do at Google.
Yeah, it's a good question. I feel like I do a lot of things. So my job role, which is product ops, product strategy and operations, um, works on a bunch of different things. I think you keep one eye on strategy and one eye on operations.
Uh-huh.
And so it really varies by what team you work in, because the team has different needs. Their products are in different phases, particularly on next billion users, product strategy and ops.
Mm-hmm.
I work on the new product incubation team,
Gotcha.
right? So these are products in like seed, incubate, and growth stage,
Mm-hmm.
but still very early stage companies. And so
Mm-hmm.
depending on which product I'm working in, sometimes I'm working on multiple.
Mm-hmm.
I can be advising on like the seed stage of like, is this a good business idea to invest in? Does this
Mm-hmm.
align with our overall portfolio strategy? Things like that. If it's in the incubate stage, it's questions like which countries should we launch in? What kind of users or demographics we should go after?
Mm-hmm.
What is the business model here? And if it's in the growth stage, it's kind of working on go to market strategy, like how do we go to market? What should be our pricing be? Um, what should be our partnership pitches, things
Mm-hmm.
look like? And so it's doing all of those things, but there's always this element of strategy
Mm-hmm.
and this element of operations, which is a little different from consulting, where you're kind of doing the strategy and the thinking, but you also have to make sure that you follow through on it and make sure it kind of happens.
Okay, so this is a global role that you work across different teams across different regions?
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when you say that you're, managing different aspects within that product strategy and ops, like I would assume that you're managing a team where like there's like a product marketers and like there's a strategy and then there's like an ops people and stuff.
Yes. So I think everyone does their own function.
Okay.
I think strategy and ops is more central
Okay.
and kind of works very collaborative with everyone. So I work on a day-to-day basis with a product manager, UX folks, analytics, finance, legal, marketing.
Yeah.
And so I'm like essentially making sure that all of these functions are like working cohesively and working closely with the product manager.
Gotcha.
The teams, like you said, are very global. So just yesterday, I was working at a morning call in India because there's an ops team in India. I had a call with a team in Singapore. The afternoon was Sydney. And then somewhere in between, I had a colleague in France.
Okay.
And so the same day I was working across time zones, which
that's a lot of fun.
It's fun and challenging at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like from where the sun rises till like, you're just like all over the place. Okay. You said that you were working on like strategy and operations even before when you were in Deloitte. Coming into tech world, did you see any like learning curves? And if yes, like how did you actually, go over them?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'd say one of the biggest learning curves for me was scale. I think just a massive scale at which Google operates. It took me a while to wrap my head around that. I think from a work like functional perspective, it was very similar to consulting. Right? You're a very structured thinker, communications, strategies, things like that. I think a few tactical things that I definitely had to like get my hands around was like analytics. I had to get really good at SQL because unlike consulting, I didn't have analysts who go do that for me. I had to like pull my own data, build my own narrative, things like that, which I also liked because I had more control on how I did things. But as an individual contributor, you have to like do everything. So that was a bit of a learning curve as well.
I can resonate with that. What do you like the most about your role, and what's maybe something that you see as an opportunity?
I'd say I like the most the people I work with. I think it's really, really fun people, my peers and my managers. Really awesome people. I think they have a very diverse set of experiences and mindsets and thinking. And so it's always good to have these conversations and brainstorms. Particularly in my area, because I work on these new product incubations and there's so many ideas and things happening that there's never a dull day. You're always working on something new and interesting, which is fun. So I'd say these are some of the biggest ones. And also I feel working on NBU, it's more being connected.
Yeah.
A lot of our focus is in India or other countries. And so having this global focus, being able to connect with the rest of the world and what's happening outside is a good feeling. Yeah, for sure. In terms of opportunities, there's definitely a lot of growth opportunities in this role, right? Because this is a very broad role, you can shape career yourself.
Gotcha.
And I think that's very interesting too. And maybe going back to your earlier question, which was learning curve. I feel this was another learning curve for me. In consulting, you kind of like in a cycle. Every 2 years, you're up for promo and you kind of with a cohort and everything happens. But here you have to shape your own career.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that was also a different thing for me.
Yeah. I You said something about, you stopped wanted you wanted to stop traveling when you're back in, the consulting days. And I think it kind of ties naturally with this question. Like, can you tell me a little bit more about, Google's culture, and maybe a little bit more about like the work-life balance? Maybe best way to put it is maybe a little flavor in comparison with your consulting days.
Okay. Yeah, it's a good question. So I feel like Google culture is very popular, right? Like everyone knows it's a really good culture, and I feel it definitely lived up to that
Yeah.
expectation. Um, I I've had really really good managers,
Mm-hmm.
which I think really motivates you. I feel having a good
Mm-hmm.
manager makes a big difference. Um, I feel there's a lot of opportunities, right? The culture is to explore and build new things and
Mm-hmm.
yourself along with it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really like that. Um, yeah, I feel this whole notion of um, doing the right thing and building global scale products, which is for
Mm-hmm.
everyone. I personally buy into this idea.
Yeah.
And in NBU, I think that's more of a focus as well. So yeah, I think the culture is pretty good for sure. I think relative to consulting, I don't see like massive. I think consulting culture was also very good. It was very
Okay.
collaborative,
Yeah.
and you work very closely with teams. Um, there's this mentorship culture in consulting as well, so it's very similar. I think travel probably would be the biggest difference
Yeah.
between the two,
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, and also I think this whole thing of impact.
Okay.
Right, in consulting, I felt like I was working on solving problems, but I never had an opportunity to either see it through
Mm.
or be there when the impact took place. But here, my work is all about what am I doing and what kind of impact it
Mm-hmm.
drives. And so I feel that's also definitely a cultural change.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I think that's like, you know mm, the reason that I really didn't look into consulting at all. Like I really wanted to own stuff myself and just like really make it happen.
Yeah. I wouldn't want to poo poo on consulting though. I feel like
Yeah,
a
no, no, no.
lot of my skills
Yeah.
that I use every day now,
Oh, for sure.
I feel a lot of the groundwork for that was laid out in consulting.
For sure.
Uh, and I think having that diversity of experience and mindset and being able to work with so many different people across levels um, has definitely come in handy in my day-to-day work for sure.
Yeah, 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 for
Yeah.
sure. No. I know we've been kind of mentioning about consulting and then Google and then tech and everything, but like my last question to you is any advice for those people who are in consulting now, who are looking for an exit or a transition or pivot to tech companies?
With general advice, I don't think there's anything in particular. I'd say really know what you want to do and why. I
Mm,
feel in tech or anywhere, there's like too many different roles, and having
yeah,
that clarity of what you want to do and why, because it really helps with kind of your narrative and
yeah,
being able to tell good stories. Um, other than that, I feel like the general consulting skill set is definitely transferable to a lot of industries, right?
mm,
You being a structured thinker, um, good communications, problem solving skills.
mm-hmm,
Um, so I feel that definitely helps. I'd say talk to people. I think consulting also has this UNC kind of benefit of this close knit community. And so definitely reach out to people that are probably in the roles you're looking for
mm-hmm.
or are in the companies you want to work for and get in touch with them, get to know the company really well before you kind of jump into the whole recruiting process.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I think, yeah, I, yeah, like, yeah, I can definitely resonate that because like it's not like, hey, I want to work for Google because it's Google. It's just like you just really need to kind of have like a personal background story where it really matches with your passion or something that can, really tell the story versus just like giving them an answer.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think going back to something we were discussing, right? Um, you shape your own career.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you go in with a motivation and a direction and clarity on what you want to do, it is also easier to shape your
Oh
career
yeah.
path. Just getting in is not end all be all. I think once you get in, you have to shape your career, and
Oh
then
yeah.
you don't want to be back in this position of like, damn, I don't know what I want to do. And so going into a company knowing what you want to do definitely helps.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, Jimmy, I think those were all my questions for today. Really appreciate it. And it was an awesome, awesome time chatting with you today. Thank you so
Yep,
much.
great to speak with you as well. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you.